Welcome to the Evolvepreneur Podcast Channel. Today's special guest is Henry Daas, who's going to talk about thriving the post-pandemic and the new normal. A bit of background on Henry. His first business is 1991, selling and installing, servicing and financing computers at large corporations. Funny as I started my business in 1991 too, so we've got a lot to talk about.
There you go.
Since he founded a succession in firms in e-commerce, finance, real estate and consumer product spaces, for most of the past decade he's been taking his experience as an entrepreneur and used it as a platform to coach other business owners and founders. In addition, in 2019, he self-published a 432-page book on everything you need to know and grow about managing money. That's a big book. He also offers a 20-week course, not a 20-year course, where I teach you to run one-on-one. And he also created masterminds on business and finance. And his infinite leisure, when? He writes screenplays for fun, plays golf, travels, and when they're not locked down, when do you travel? And play Catan? What's Catan with my
Catan. Welcome. You know what? I just got off a podcast and she's like, what is Catan? I'm going to have to change that. Settlers of Catan. It's a board game. It's a great game.
Ah, right. I've heard of that.
Really, really good game.
Yeah. Right. Gotcha. Well, that's okay. It always starts as a point. So one of the things that I noticed on your website when I went and had checked you out was that, and I really like this, you said, when you want help scaling your business while avoiding all the classic bullshit. So I think that really encapsulates our conversation today, because I think a lot of what people hear is bullshit. Right?
No argument there.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Right.
So tell us a little bit of your background. I mean, I obviously got a fair bit in there. I mean, I left school when I was 15, so I started working for a bank at 15, for 11 years. So I got a lot of experience. But my first sort of foray into business and software and stuff like that was about 1989. I sort of opened the business in 1990, 91. So we actually probably started business pretty much the same time. The same kind of things that went on back then, pre-Google days, pre anything. I mean, the internet didn't tell you much back then.
No, there really wasn't. It was dial-up. I mean, I graduated college in 81 with an electrical engineering degree. So I did work in cubicle world for about 10 years before I started my first business. I mean, I started it as a side hustle, ran it for about 18 months while I was still doing my day job, working down on Wall Street. I worked for the New York Stock Exchange as a computer programmer, and did about $600,000 worth of business, and turned to my wife and said, you know what, I'm quitting my $60,000 a year job and I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And that was pretty much it. And never looked back.
And you took it okay?
You know what? I think she took it really well. I mean, my wife is an entrepreneur as well, so we've both been working without a net for pretty much our entire adult lives. So we have a lot of empathy for the struggles of being a business owner. So.
It's quite funny. I went to a presentation with Harry Kiyosaki. I can't think of his first name for a minute. Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Rich Dad Poor Dad guy, yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things he said that stuck with me from that point when I saw it, and I was probably not. I think I was already in business at that stage, but it said, a job is income, but business is wealth.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference. I mean, the biggest problem is that it's very difficult to get ahead on a wage. It's, you just got too much on you.
In my book, FQ Financial Intelligence, that's what I said. The quickest path to wealth, to having a solid net worth and a really stellar balance sheet is entrepreneurship. It just is. Which isn't to say that you can't work in the C-suite, because those guys certainly get compensated very, very well, but it takes a long time to get up there.
And I think the danger too, when you get big money like that, you tend to spend big money. So you never really ever keep it or reinvest it anywhere else. You almost like, you see the money coming in, you feel safe, so you spend it on stuff that probably you shouldn't. And then you end up in a situation where you don't have that much savings. I mean, 90% of the population is one disaster will finish them. And so,
there's an old saying that at least in the U.S., that if you've got $10 in your pocket, you have a higher net worth than 25% of Americans.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
All sorts of different stuff. The very first chapter of my book is called The Psychology of Money. Mm-hmm. To me, it just seemed like the logical place to start. Got to talk about your money mindset. You're living in scarcity, you're living in abundance, or you're living somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
I would say 8 out of 10 people that I meet, probably myself included, live in scarcity, right? We're always worried about preserving our capital.
Yep.
But I'm also a trader, and I've been a trader for 40 years. So my risk tolerance is probably a little bit skewed. What I consider to be, a minor risk, other people would probably think it would be like, jumping out of an airplane without a parachute.
Exactly.
So it's all relative. And again, some of that is being an entrepreneur for 30 years and really, don't work, don't eat.
Yeah.
It's pretty much as simple as that. But at this point, I don't know any other way.
No, I think you got the point there. I mean, I was running a software company where we had 23 staff, and I was buying a brand new car every 2 weeks with the wages. Like, we had $1 million payroll. And sometimes and this went on for quite a few years. I mean, eventually I sold that company, thank God. It was so stressful. But we would be, short on payday. Like, on Monday morning, we'd get up and we'd go, we're $20,000 short on payroll. We need payroll by Thursday. And funny, somehow, you'd make it. But
I can't tell you how many times I had to write checks out of my personal account in order to make payroll.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, there has to be a better way to do this. This is early on.
Yes.
When you're just getting started and you don't know what the rules are and you're kind of making it up as you go along.
And your empire building as well. Like, you almost got this thing in your head. Like, when I had 23 staff, I was thinking, oh, well, I can really grow this thing with all these people. And what I realized was, as soon as you hit 21 staff, the whole ball game changes.
Everything changes, yeah.
And you sort of get caught in that wheel. And we were 80% gross profit on our business, so we had pretty good profits coming through, right?
That's good.
And we'd built $1 million worth of reoccurring income in the first year. So really, we're in a situation where every month $80,000 just automatically landed in our bank account. And so we'd set this up in a situation where, but we still struggle because we want to expand. You still got to business chews cash like anything, right? And there's always something that hits you next week that you got to pay for you didn't expect. So I think, it's always a roller coaster ride. Like, you never really ever think, and I think the internet changed that. I think one of the things with SaaS SaaS software and all this other thing, someone could write a piece of software or provide a service online to a bigger percentage of the marketplace. And so you had a much better opportunity of success because you could broaden your market and you could go after, different people that you could never get in contact before. And I think that's where huge opportunity in comparison. Like, you look back in 1990, the best thing you could do was like newspapers, yellow pages, TV ads or radio ads. So you couldn't do much really advertising. You couldn't garner that market and certainly couldn't track them. All right, so you didn't know what was going on unless you actually put a coupon code or something in your ad. You had no idea where your ads come from.
It was difficult. If you had a radio ad, it was like, use a keyword. But on the opposite side of it, when you reduce all those barriers to entry, then anybody can do it, right? Yeah. I'm a business coach. Anybody can be a business coach. There's no barriers to entry.
No,
there really aren't. Anybody next day hang up a shingle and say, I'm a business coach. That's what I did, right? 10 years ago.
But like in Australia,
the thing is to go out you got to go out and get clients, right?
Exactly. But in Australia,
you're a business coach, right?
In Australia, if you buy a house, that you've got to go through all these certified people to buy a house. Probably the same thing in America, right? Where you've got to go and see a registered real estate agent. You've got to talk to a bank. All these people are, certified, verified, whatever in the process. But when you get into coaching and all that consulting work, there's no real formal qualification. So the danger is you end up employing someone who actually doesn't know what they're talking about, and they could wreak havoc on your business or you.
Oh yeah, I know. I the first thing I did was I signed up for a course with one of the best coach training facilities. Spent probably $10,000 and a whole year doing all the courses and going through and learning, the rules of the game, the rules of engagement. And then I cherry picked out of that the stuff that I liked, and I kind of threw away the stuff that really didn't work. And then I added in sort of my own particular spin on it. And then I started. And then I went out. No, I had street cred and I had, a pretty thick Rolodex. A lot of people knew me from all the years of doing business. So it really wasn't that difficult to transition. But if you were just a guy on the street trying to do this, sure, there's no barriers to entry other than going out and demonstrating to the world that people should part with their money and that they're going to get value for it.
It's interesting. Right. Frank Kern's got a really good saying, and I was actually listening to the new Clubhouse app on a couple of days ago, and he said his theory is that you get new clients by demonstrating that you can actually help them. right? And to me, that sounds like a given, but it's not, right? People don't want to demonstrate because they can't necessarily help them, right? And so by demonstrating you can help them, well, then they'll buy from you. That's pretty simple, right?
Well, I had somebody ask me this a couple of years ago, and I wrote about it somewhere on my website. She said, "How do I know that you can help me?" And it really took me by surprise. No one had ever asked me that. And I repeated the question to give my brain a chance to come up with an answer. And then I paused, and then the answer came to me. I said, "You can't. There's no way that you can be sure that I can help you. I know that I can help you. Why? Because I've helped scores of people. I've got the track record. But that doesn't mean anything to you because you haven't experienced that. The only way you're going to experience it is to take a little bit of a leap of faith." Right? And that's tough.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Very, very tough for a lot of people. Talking about scarcity. They don't want to take a leap of faith. One of the other recurring themes in my book on finance is risk. How do you assess risk? How do you assess risk as an entrepreneur? Right? Where are they lurking in your business? You talked about payroll. We had payroll risk too, right? How am I backstopped? I didn't even have a credit line at the time. I finally had to go out and get myself a credit line. Now, every client that I talk to, when we talk about finance for their business, it's like, tell me about your credit facilities. Well, the bank of mom and dad or the bank of me. It's like, no, somebody else, right?
You know, the
Someone
funny
that
thing
you
is,
pay interest to.
the funny thing is, if you're an employer and your staff member applies to the bank for a loan, they give it to them based on the fact you're their employer.
No doubt.
Lend you the money as the employer, and you've got more to risk. Like, you're going to hang on to that house far probably more than an employee will, because they'll just go and get another job. They'll probably be okay. But often the entrepreneur is working from his home. He needs that house. He's going to fight tooth and nail for that house.
No question.
Look at it and think, no, you're too much risk. Hang on a minute, you just gave my employee $1 million loan, and you're on my risk. Like, where's the logic in that? I never got that one. Even though I worked at the bank for 12 years, I never got the logic.
No, and you think about which is riskier, being an entrepreneur or being an employee. I will tell you that being an employee, look at how many people lost their job because of the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
Right? That's risk. Now, a lot of entrepreneurs lost their livelihood as well. But you know what? They've got skills and they can just pivot to a new business. I shouldn't say just, it's a little glib to say that. But if you're an employee and this is your skill set and no one's hiring, kind of out of luck.
Yeah, what can you do? Yeah. And I think it's interesting. Like, I think for the entrepreneurship, if something really bad happens, you wallow in self-pity for a day, right? And then
or a week or a month.
Yeah, try not to let it go more than a week.
However long it takes to get it.
Exactly. Hopefully not less than a week, and then you get back into it. You start again, right?
You dust yourself off. I've had 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I've lost track of the businesses that I've had. You start them, you make money with them, and eventually they get to a point where, I've had partnership breakups. I had a partner who committed suicide. So I've seen a lot of stuff. At some point in time, you got to pivot out of it, reinvent yourself, and do something else.
Yeah. And I think it's important. Like, you don't want to say that you got 30 years experience of doing the same thing every year for 30 years. That's not 30 years experience. It's just 1 year's experience, right?
Well, you know what? I look at it and say, I've had, 10 different lives, right? We just bought a house. We're moving. And I realized in hindsight, my wife and I, we just celebrated 30 years together. We've been together, 30 years wedding anniversary on New Year's Eve. And but 32 years together. And I realized, I detected a pattern. I never thought about it, but we move every 10 years.
Isn't that crazy? I got the same problem.
Yeah, it's not a problem. It's a brand new opportunity. We're moving to a new house where, all that stuff is in a little bit of disarray behind me. It's an opportunity to kind of reboot.
Yes.
We can grab the stuff that we like. We've got dusty old stuff that's been around. It's like, I haven't used this. I've got a closet full of clothes. Now, granted, until New Year's Eve, I hadn't worn anything but sweatpants since March. And on New Year's Eve, I decided I'm going to wear trousers, right? Because it's New Year's Eve. And we went to a friend. So it was just the four of us, COVID-free New Year's. I'm going to wear trousers.
I think your closet ends up being a wishful thinking area. Like, you look at those clothes, and I can't fit that. Beautiful jackets, suits, and stuff like that. But I look at it, it's like it's a good opportunity to pick out one or two that I like, and the rest of it I will donate to charity. Yeah.
We're donating furniture. We've got more furniture than we need for this new house. I'm putting stuff on something here in the US called Craigslist. I don't know if you have Craigslist.
No, not there, but similar. Yeah, we got.
But you have something similar.
Yeah, Gumtree.
And I'm already getting pinged by people. I've got 12 television sets. I don't need 12 television sets.
You need a 10-year reset. I mean, I sort of went through business for 10 years. I moved to Sydney and I operated a business, but under 10 years, like the distribution, and then we pivoted to what we're doing now. I think I've got another 5 or 6 years in this, so that should get me to where I need to be.
Yeah, it's an opportunity. Just put all that stuff and look forward. We bought a new house. We always renovate when we buy a house. We're never satisfied to have a place. We always have to do stuff. So we're making plans and we're doing it. And it's really exciting. Yeah. And it gives you an opportunity to kind of re-energize yourself. So I think it's a good thing. Business, same thing. Yeah. Right. Sometimes it's like it's run its course. Maybe you can sell it. Maybe you can give it to somebody else so they can turn it into their profit center, take a little coin, put that into a new business. Do it all over again. It's fun.
I think the thing is, you got to remember, some people are gardeners and some people are hunters, right? And so people can set businesses up that can't run it. Other people are really good at gardening and growing that business, but at the end of the day, they can't start it. So,
there's the visionary role. So people who have tons of great ideas but can never get out of the gate.
Yep.
Right. And then you got other people who are the operators. If you've ever read, the E-Myth, right? Every entrepreneur should read Michael Gerber, right? The E-Myth. Same thing. You have operator, but they have no vision. So if you hand them a bunch of stuff to do, they can do it really, really well. But if if nobody hands it to them, they're going to sit there twiddling their thumbs, right?
Exactly.
Because they just don't have that part of them.
And I think the thing is, most people don't realize that 90% of what goes wrong in your business is inside your business. So if you're in a situation where you control what happens, and I see business operators saying, I can't do this, I can't do that. And so, yes, you can do whatever you want. Right? You can fire all your customers tomorrow. You can double your prices, which we've done. Every time I get into any sort of a situation where we're getting too much business, we just double our prices.
Yeah. No, you can fire your clients. Right. Yeah. I mean, I've recommended that to people sometimes. It's addition by subtraction.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
When I didn't want a client, I would give them an outrageously high price and hope that they didn't take it. You know what? But some clients know that they're difficult to deal with, so that backfires.
Yes, we did a book for a client.
Give them a ridiculous price, and they know, and they want you, and they accept it. And it's like, I really didn't want them to accept it. Because no matter how much I charge them, it's not going to make up for the headache that I know is coming.
Yeah, I think the most dangerous client in the world knows when they're a pain.
They're
the most dangerous clients, because ones that don't know, they just go through and they get sacked and they go to another thing and they don't understand it's their problem. That's all good. But the client actually knows they're a pain. They're the ones who actually are dangerous because they know.
The self-aware trouble client, they know what it is. I work with lots and lots of New Yorkers, and New Yorkers I'm a New Yorker. We're kind of a different breed, and luckily I'm good in sniffing it out. It's like, oh no, this guy's trouble. Right. I remember there was a woman, she was a lawyer. This is way back in the day. And I didn't want to work for her. And she asked me what our hourly rate was. And I said $250 an hour. Now, this is 30 years ago.
Okay.
That's a high rate. She said, that's more than I charge. I said, yeah, but your knowledge is in all those books, and our knowledge changes every month. Right? This stuff is obsoleting itself every month. That was my little argument. She didn't hire us, and I was glad that she didn't hire, because even at $250 an hour, I knew she was going to be trouble.
It's funny, lawyers. I've always avoided lawyers because I got built-in legal action. I
had a lawyer who stiffed me for some money, and he said, "Sue me."
Yeah, good luck with that, right?
That's what he said. He said, no, he stiffed me for a bit of the money. He said, "I'm going to pay you this," which was about 70% of what the total bill was, and if you don't like it, go ahead and sue me. And after that, I never worked for another lawyer.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah, I've always kept clear, because I think they're a breed in themselves, and I think they need to deal with potentially.
They have unlimited. They have unlimited legal coverage, which I don't have.
Yes, no, I don't.
If I have any regrets, it's that and I have very few. I should have gone to law school, not to practice law, but just to have the JD. I have some friends who are entrepreneurs, and I would say, and they never got their, never passed the bar, did any of that stuff, but they have a law degree, and it really is helpful in business to understand that.
Because I think there's a couple of things with business actually is interesting, is understanding the laws of business, accounting and all that sort of stuff, which most entrepreneurs don't have a lot of financial acumen. And one of the things I read recently was that a lot of the big CEOs of these big multi-billion-dollar companies, their financial intelligence is quite low. So they don't really understand, like this guy might be running a $20 billion company. They don't even understand the balance sheet. And so you look at it and think, whoa, like just because this guy's running a big company doesn't mean they understand the fundamentals of business. They've got people.
Yeah, no, it doesn't mean it. No, finance is a mystery to a lot of people, and I run into that with a lot of my clients. They just don't understand their numbers. They don't know what they mean. They don't know what a statement of cash flow is. They don't know balance sheet. They know they know a P&L, right?
Yeah.
Right.
There's a bit down the bottom that tells you whether 18 months afterwards tells you how much money you made.
Go look at their bank account. If the bank account is positive, they assume they're making money. The idea of accounts receivable and accounts payable is a mystery. No, there's money out there that you owe people that you kind of got paid, and now you got to pay your vendors, right? Oh, that pesky little thing. I got to pay my vendors. You need to know that. One
of the things that I sort of discovered early on was don't have people owe you money. So we always take money up front. And I've had the situation where people have said, and it's probably a little bit a nasty way of saying it, but most people get paid after the job, but wealthy people get paid before the job.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you can, and I think I've almost never had anybody say to me, oh, I'm not going to pay you, because they trust you, they'll pay you the money. If they don't trust you, they won't ever pay you the money, so it doesn't matter. But the reality is if they pay you up front, then to me it's an exchange of energy. It means that I am now focused on your job. You've now bought a piece of me. I want to deliver as much as I can, and I'm not worried about the money ever again. And I think that's a difference in paying after the job, because I think it's dangerous, because people are so focused on getting the job done so they can get paid, they cut corners.
Oh yeah. Well, what happens is, because I had a home theater business, so we're like a contractor. So I would charge 60% up front, because I worked on a 40% margin. So I knew that my costs were covered pretty much from day one. Now, that's very risky for the party on the other end, because if I don't complete the job, they're kind of out of luck. And I've dealt with a lot of contractors. This house that we bought, we're going to do some work on it. And we've decided, after doing 2 other projects, that we're going to GC it ourselves. We want to, again, we're back to risk. We want to eliminate the general contractor risk, because you get to a certain point, if you're doing a big, multi-$100,000 project, where the contractor can turn around and do the math in their head and say, you know what, even if I finish this job, I'm not going to make any money, so I'm going to walk away. And I know of situations where that's happened, and you don't want to put yourself in that position. So you got to hedge yourself a little bit, because you're in a partnership, and there is a trust level, and it can be very tenuous at times, especially if things start to go sideways.
Yeah. And some people just bail, right? It's fight or fright, right? So basically they just take a run for it. And
I know people who have had situations with contractors or other things where they just bailed.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they're gone, and they've already given them, lots of money.
Yeah.
What can you do?
Yeah. So I think it's risk and trust. So one of the things that I noticed you talked about, and it's probably something we can talk about, is where do you see things going on now? Like you've got a pandemic that's refocused the world on things that were important, right? Home, money, all these things like, relationships become really important. Where do you see it going? Because we're not going to go back to where we were. I don't see suddenly next year, suddenly everybody says, oh, let's go back to the old way of doing things. Let's do lots of travel. Let's do all these public events and stuff like that. I don't think it'll ever go back to that.
Well, you know what? I think we will. It's just not going to happen that quickly. But it will. If you think about, my parents were Depression babies. My dad fought in World War II. My mom was home. I guess she was probably just starting high school during World War II. And when they talked about how different the world was when All the men were gone. The world was at war for 5 solid years.
Mm.
They were rationing things and women were working. Everything changed. The whole world was turned on its head.
Yep.
But then it was over. And it took a while, but eventually, within probably 10 or 15 years, it kind of went back to the way it was before the war. This is, to a large degree, kind of a war, and things will change. But, you know, there will be concerts again. There'll be movie theaters again. One of the trends that I'm seeing, which is really interesting, is just a lot of hands-off, a lot of business that was done, you know, in person, face-to-face, isn't any longer. So, for instance, I needed to have the oil changed in my car, and I didn't realize that there was a place that would actually come to my house and change my oil.
Right.
Now, a lot of people do it themselves,
sure.
Right? And you can. I'm handy. But it's a messy job, and I don't have any place to dispose of, you know, 9 quarts of oil.
Yeah, not without
Right?
getting.
I just don't. Yeah, otherwise it's not really that difficult. I mean, you know, you get a torque wrench, and I got tons of tools. Take the little thing off, clean it, but now I'm stuck with all these, you know, all this oil. Where am I going to dispose of it? But I found same thing with tires. I wanted to have my tires changed. Usually I go, it's a whole big thing. Guy shows up in a truck, Sprinter van, changes and balances the tires on my car. You know, needed to have the dog groomed. Instead of taking it to the groomer comes to me. Right? So there will be a lot of businesses that are going to change in that regard. My son got in a little accident. It really wasn't his fault. It happened, you know, at his girlfriend's house. I just went through the whole process where I went out and I took the pictures with the phone and I uploaded it to an app. And then I just got an email earlier today that they're going to send me a check for it.
Right? Yeah, no assessor, right? They just trust you that they can see that logic tells them that it looks okay. So it's
I just follow the steps.
Yeah.
It's like, take this picture, take that picture, do this little video, do this, do that. Yeah. Never have to really interact with you. I just closed on a house about a month ago. Didn't have to sit in the same room. It's all done remotely. Wire money, lawyer does this, blah, blah, blah. Real estate agent picks up the keys, brings him up to the house. I said, you know, just hide him in the bush because I'm 100 miles away. I can pick them up from you. And a couple of days later, I came and I fished the keys out and a brand new owner of the home. So we're going to see a lot of that. So there's tons and tons of business opportunities and the technology that goes around that.
I believe.
And there are going to be opportunities in the face-to-face world as well. There may be fundamental changes to how restaurants are set up. New York City, we're already seeing it where there's a lot more outdoor, you know, there's a lot less parking because there's a lot more outdoor dining. They're setting up these little kiosks in parking spaces. Right. It's a little weird because it's like, well, we're still indoors, but we're outdoors.
Yeah, so I want to sit in a car park and eat food. I just don't ever get that principle. But anyway.
Yeah, it is. I know. It's weird. Hopefully they will move this onto the sidewalk and turn New York into more of a European-like city where people can eat on the sidewalk. Because I think it's a little dangerous being kind of out in traffic.
Yeah, in Australia, it's interesting. In Sydney, there's not a lot of outdoor dining as such. In Melbourne, it's a bigger Greek population, and so they've got lots of outdoor dining. So it's very different. It really comes down to the culture. So Melbourne's a bit like New York in terms of the design of it because it's squared up.
Right.
But it's very similar to Sydney when it comes to the kind of more enclosure and more cramped kind of environment where you've got that, you don't have a lot of space in a situation.
Right.
So, yeah, it's quite interesting. So I think, and I think the other thing too is, like you say, I think home delivery is massive. Like in Australia, they're talking people are basically earning a living on home delivery.
Sure.
I've got a friend who basically does home delivery and picking up like $1,000, $2,000 a week just delivering food.
Yeah, I see the kids. They order DoorDash, and it's like every day.
Your job used to be like you go to the deliver newspapers. Now you can get a job on Dash, and then you log on and basically go and do that for a living. And I think the danger there is that these people that start those or work for them, in Australia, it's also been the case. Is are they employees? Are they contractors? Because if they're contractors, there was requirements, right?
Yeah, there was a case in California where they're going to pass legislation to determine whether they are what in America we would call 1099 contractors,
right,
versus regular employees, because the ramifications are with Social Security, unemployment, workers' comp, does change the playing field.
So one of the things that I sort of like think about, and as you get older and as an entrepreneur, is did you really provide for your retirement? Are you even going to retire? Right? Because the reality is, if an 80-year-old person can run the government in America, then do you retire? You're not going to retire at 65. As an entrepreneur.
No,
depending on what you're doing.
Never intend.
Maybe, but you're not going to retire. So where do you?
As long as someone pays me money, I'm not retired.
Your mouth works, right? Your brain works. You can keep working.
Works for me. But I've also put away, quite a bit of money, because I started funding my retirement when I was 22, as soon as I got out of college and got a job, because I understand what Einstein called the greatest invention in mankind, which is compound interest.
Yes.
Right. Tax deferred compound interest by the facilities that we have in the U.S. with individual retirement accounts, 401ks, various facilities. Yes, you're going to pay taxes. You're going to defer it, but you're not eroding it year after year after year. That money is compounding on itself.
Mm-hmm.
So over the course of 50 years, a little bit of money that was put in early can, properly managed, can grow into a massive fortune, right? And you don't have to be an entrepreneur. You can be of relatively ordinary means and still put together enough money to have a nice retirement and not depend on the government to do it for you, because they're not going to cover you.
No. I see it out, and they're not going to have enough money. Like if you look at apparently in Germany and Russia, they say that the older population vastly outnumbers the younger population.
They do.
And they won't be able to afford to actually look after them in their retirement. The younger population won't be enough of them to be able to...
No, we're seeing it now. All the baby boomers, myself included, I was born in 59. So the baby boomers are considered like 1946 to 1964. So I'm in that...
Just off the cusp of that, I was 65, so...
So, you're whatever the next thing after boomer is. But
Generation X, I think it's cool. I think it's...
Oh, it could be. Generation X.
Yeah.
So, they're retiring in huge numbers, and there aren't the numbers putting into the pool. Eventually, the arithmetic doesn't work.
So do you think money will become irrelevant? Do you think at some point, like if you look at Star Trek...
Money meaning what? Well, it'll all be Bitcoin?
Well, maybe. But you look at something like Star Trek and all these movies that are the future movies, particularly Star Trek and those sort of ones, they never talk about money. They never
No, they don't.
Anything. It's all provided from. It's almost like it's a socialist, communist kind of future that they see. I don't know. But the reality is there's no money there, right? Will money become irrelevant?
There are people who espouse the idea of, guaranteed income. Right, everyone is guaranteed a particular income. I mean, here in America, the numbers are staggering. On a worldwide basis, I think the richest 8 people on planet Earth have more asset than the 3.5 billion poorest people.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
Here in the U.S., it's something like the top 5 people, like Bezos and Zuckerberg and Elon Musk, have more assets than something like half the U.S. population. If you think about all of the trillions of dollars, and I think the U.S. has a combined net worth somewhere over $100 trillion, and if you divide it up by the population, it's a decent net worth for pretty much every man, woman, and child. But that's not the way mankind is designed, right? It just isn't. There are always going to be the overachievers, the ultra wealthy, and they're going to be the poor. But what you don't want is that systematized. You don't want a system like we have here in America that, I don't want to go on too much of a soapbox, but the system is designed to maintain that.
Yes. Yeah,
right.
Keep you in your lane, right? Stop you from getting...
It changed in 86. And again, I wrote about it in the book. Europe has... And I know a lot of European people. I'm involved with, different groups that are European, and I talk to them, and they're like, they just talk about how they have, free health insurance, because I pay almost $2,000 a month for health insurance out of my own pocket.
Yeah.
They have free, university where I paid, $600,000 to send my kids to university. Right. So it's like, hey, every Americans look at that and that's great. Yeah, but they pay 50% taxes where we don't pay anywhere near that.
Someone's got to pay for it, right? Somewhere along the line.
Someone has to pay for it somewhere along the line.
Nothing, no such thing as a free ride.
Right. So we used to have very, very high taxes going back into the 1950s, as high as like 90%. We didn't have what they had in the UK, where they had like famous cases where people were taxed at 105%. Their tax bill was more than they made in an entire year. We never had anything crazy like that. But that was actually designed as a means to sort of equalize it. But now it's become so unequal that there's no possibility of equalizing it ever. It's just gotten the power and the control is so top heavy now. It's kind of a story for maybe a different podcast.
Yeah, probably.
But I did write about it. You just don't want it to be systemically set up so that you can't get ahead. Still, I don't know if there's such a thing as the Australian dream, but the American dream is that anybody can come here to this country and they can make it, right?
Australia
You're a poor immigrant, you can make it.
And I guess Australia's a bit like that too, but Australia's Australian dream's own your own home. That's the Australian dream.
It's still a dream here in America to own your own home. Sure.
Not necessarily a reality because, houses are getting up in price all the time. And I mean, when I started in the bank, interest rates for housing loans were 13%. When I started.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Now it's like 2%, 3% on the housing loans and lowering all the time. So, suddenly your interest rate is really good, but your house price is quite high. So even though you're not paying a lot of interest, your initial deposit in the money you need to get in that house is still significant. And so I think the dream of owning your own home is fantastic, and it's probably the best thing an entrepreneur can do, because at the end of the day, you don't want to be controlled by getting chucked out of particularly you're working from home, right? You don't want to be chucked out of your house every 5 minutes because the landlord's decided he wants to sell it, which would happen to me a lot. I mean, I moved 13 times in 13 years once, just because of landlords and things like that deciding they want to sell houses or move in themselves. So I think there's a risk involved in that. And you talk about work from home. I always remind people that you're not working from home, you're living at your office. So, good point.
So
I work from home. If I work in the lounge room, I'm saying I'm working from home. If I work in the office, I'm working. So I say it.
I'm in a basement here, and I've been working in this basement for the last 9 years. And we bought this house that's out in the country. It's on 5 acres. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere. And I told my wife, I am never working in a basement ever again.
No,
I want to see the sky. I don't care even if it has to be just a small little desk. I just don't want to do that. I don't want to be subterranean anymore. And so we're seeing these mega trends here where, office, the whole idea of the office, right? So you're talking about things that will stick around. It's, Pinterest paid a $90 million breakup fee to get out of a lease in San Francisco for their new headquarters, because they realized, well, you know what? We've legitimized work from home, so we're not going to need the space, right? Microsoft has said work from home is permanent. Facebook, same thing. Now, permanent is a relative term, but they're looking at it and saying, so that changes a lot of things. That changes the value of commercial real estate. That changes automobiles. Well, you know what? I don't need 2 automobiles anymore. 1 automobile is fine because we're not commuting anymore, right? So that changes that. We can live further away from the mothership, and if we only have to go there once a week, we can get more space, lower taxes, more space for the kids. So those kind of changes may actually shift the dynamics of going forward. And they may end up being permanent. I don't have the answer to that.
So what do you think about that concept? Like, to me, I've been remote working for 10 years, maybe longer. I mean, we set up...
Yeah, me too.
We did outsourcing before outsourcing was cool, right? And I think the thing is that the danger there is, how do you keep that connection with the staff? And I mean, there's some technologies that are improving, but I mean, people got really tired of Zoom, right? And I think the thing is, it's going to be, there's an ad on TV which is classic in Australia for a KFC, right? So I think Kentucky Fried Chicken, I don't know about in America, but I think they've kind of given up now. because they know that their stuff is bad for you. So their tagline is, how about some KFC? So if something goes wrong, you say, let's have some comfort food, right? That's, to me, that's what I've almost given up in marketing, okay? So there's an ad that comes up, and there's got these 4 people pop up, and the woman says, I'm sorry I'm a bit late. I really had my hands full this morning, right? And in the background, this guy lifts up out of the bed, right? Because she's doing it in the bedroom. And that's the guy from accounts, right? And then she says, how about some KFC, right?
Oh, my God.
I think the biggest problem in working from home is, you're going to eat more because you're going to pass that fridge a lot, right? And then the second part about it, you have no human connection.
Your world gets small.
Yeah.
Right? I've worked from home for 10 years.
Right? Paranoia. You start getting paranoid about... I find with clients that suddenly start going off the rails, it's not what you're doing for them. Something's going on in their world, personally, that's affecting them.
Oh, yeah.
No one's willing to ask the question, what's wrong with you? What's the problem? Oh, actually, like I've got cancer, or I've been divorced, or something major's happening, and they're taking it out on everybody else. And usually you're cheaper as a coach or whatever than the bank manager, the lawyer or whatever to talk to, right?
Yeah.
They take it
I'm
out.
definitely cheaper than a divorce lawyer. So
yeah, exactly. So I think the trouble is that human connection, I think, is interesting. Like, I don't know whether you've heard of an app called Clubhouse. But it's something
I just heard about it an hour ago when I was on the podcast before this. That's very funny that you mentioned it. How weird is that?
And I think the funny thing is that it's an audio only platform, so it's like podcasting, but it's live, right? But it's invite only, so it's FOMO based in that if you can't get in, then you got to wait, right? And it took me I was pretty lucky actually. I had a friend in LA who got me in pretty quickly.
Right.
But what I've noticed is that these people are having real conversations in these rooms that are like, big players in the marketing and financial fields, a lot of, in Silicon Valley investors and stuff coming and having these one-on-one conversations with each other. It's almost like you're in a room that you're listening in on a conversation you really probably shouldn't be listening in on. And it's, right? And so it's almost like reality TV audio. And I think that gives people a bit of a connection. That thing's taken off like dramatic. I think it's like 1 million users now, and still on private beta. You can't get in unless you're invited.
Oh, trust me, I just clicked on it an hour ago, and it's like, it's only on iOS. You know what it is? It's Discord for adults.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Basically, what it is, because I have a group that I'm with that has a Discord channel with people all over the globe, non-gamer thing. But my kids, it's like, they've got a zillion channels, and it's it reminds me a little bit of the old-fashioned dial-up, bulletin boards way back.
We'll come back
Genie
around.
was one of them, way before AOL. Yep. I remember when AOL, $4.95 a month for life. That was their pitch back in the late 80s. I did it for a couple months, and I'm like, nah, not really for me.
So everything old is new again.
It just gets repurposed, rebranded, whatever it is. They're not knitting something out of whole cloth. They're just taking something else and putting a different marketing spin on it. And, obviously, the cool kids are doing it. I don't know.
It's funny because
I'm more of a reader. Yeah.
It's funny. I actually watched a movie that was the original McDonald's movie where he basically supersized me, where he ate Macca's for a month.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
This follow-up movie, and one of the things that was quite funny, he went to McDonald's in this follow-up documentary, and he goes, I haven't been here since I did that other movie, right? And he ordered the food, and he said, he looked around and says, looks different, but the food tastes as bad as it used to back 20 years ago, right? Nothing has changed. It's just the packaging. They've got green on the walls to make you think you're eating green stuff. All the visual elements have changed. He said, but the actual food still tastes horrible.
The food still tastes the same. It's way too salty. But,
yeah, exactly. So it's quite interesting how old is new. So
probably a step up from KFC. Do you know the KFC chickens are all of the chickens that are in the chicken farms that lay eggs under artificial light, right? So that's their first life. Once they can no longer do that and they just run out of steam, laying eggs, they end up being the chickens in KFC.
Oh God! And I mean,
It's a horrible, horrible life, but that's the life that they live.
I don't want to call that movie, that documentary, Chicken something or other. It's quite eye-opening because they talk about big chicken. I didn't even know there was such a thing.
Big chicken, yeah. Chicken is huge, huge, huge. Tyson is huge here in the U.S.
So that's one of the things, the biggest problems in the marketplace is you have these really big conglomerates that control these markets. And I think that's the challenge. So it's probably the segue into Bitcoin, because what do you think about Bitcoin? Because I think Bitcoin is gambling, not investing, but it's certainly an interesting future.
I hear it from the millennials, and I told the guys in the mastermind group, I put the chart up, and I said that is that's a parabola. That's a parabolic move that is not sustainable. Mm-hmm. Set some stops. There's an old saying, nobody ever went broke taking a profit.
Yeah, there's a book called that, actually. So actually a book I read once.
So, yeah, the trader in me looks at that. Today it was down about 20%. I think at one point it hit 40,000. I had it up on the screen. I think it closed up at, well, actually, it never really closes.
No.
Let me just bring it up right now in real time. Yeah, it's at 35,000.
So it was 38, I think I checked a couple of days ago. So it's all over the place.
It went all the way up to 40. So that kind of volatility you're going to see. One of the I guess fundamental rules of investing or trading is you should at least have some passing knowledge or understanding of how the entity you are about to invest in makes money. Mm-hmm. Right?
And afford to lose Bitcoin, it, right? And can afford to lose it.
Well, I don't know about that, because it's rare that things go, if you buy a stock, right? If you wanted to buy Tesla stock, let's say, at its $800 price handle, it's rare that stuff goes to zero, but sure, there's an opportunity for some real downside exposure. But it takes a liquidity event before you lock in your loss. So you have to be disciplined. Yes. Right. So, you can see swoons. I happen to be, I happen to have a larger than usual cash position now in my portfolio for a couple of reasons. One, I bought this house and I had to pay cash for it because of, we were talking about mortgages and stuff. Yes, I'm getting a mortgage at 3%, but my mortgage guy kind of screwed everything up. So I finally got to the point that said, I'm just going to pay cash for it and we'll figure it out later.
Yep.
So now we're figuring it out and everything's done. But I tell you what, sometimes it can be so frustrating dealing with banks and all of that kind of stuff.
Move slowly, then glacier.
But I also used it as an opportunity over the last, probably 3 months to just take some profits. Mm-hmm. Right? Take some money off the table.
Yep.
Boom.
Be prepared to walk.
Sock it away, because the market's really, pretty overbought. So I will wait for the inevitable downturn and, put some money back into play. In the meantime, I'll look for some things that are interesting. Look for some fallen angels. One of my favorite trades. Look for a really good company that's had some really bad news. Mm-hmm. When I first got into Facebook, that was exactly how I got into Facebook.
Right. Yeah.
Because they print money.
Yes.
And then Zuckerberg went in front of Congress and then they had an earnings report where they lost 25% of their value the day after earnings, right?
A lot. Mm-hmm.
Remember that? That was maybe 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, there's my buy signal."
Something happened bad. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I'm listening to like Clubhouse, and they've got Kevin Harrington on there. They actually did like a Shark Tank presentation thing where you could actually pitch for money. And one of the investors said, "Tell me the bad news. Tell me what your problems are. I don't want you to tell me all the good stuff. I want you to tell me what the bad stuff is, because then I can accept. If I can handle the bad stuff, I can handle the good stuff."
Did they? Did they tell them any of the bad stuff?
No, people didn't. By nature, they didn't. Right? They still avoided the question. One someone says, "Oh, my business is perfect." He said, "Your business can't be perfect.
No,
what's wrong with your business?" And she wouldn't answer it. All right, because
that right there would make me. What do they say on Shark Tank? I'm out.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. If I ask, if everything's rosy, right? That's like the Trump thing. Everything is beautiful. It's great. It's this and that. It's like, no. Nothing's like
balanced. That. No business is balanced. That's
nothing is like that. Right. Mm-hmm. I've never come across anything that's like that.
Yeah.
So I'm not expecting you to open kimono and tell me all the dirty laundry, but you should have, if you're going to be in front of an audience like that, you should have one or two relatively easy things that you can talk about, right? Here are a couple of headwinds that we're facing, right?
Because otherwise, why do you need the money, right? If you're looking for an investor or looking for somebody to participate, there must be a reason why you need the money. Because
use of funds.
You don't need the money.
Right? Yeah. Right. No, I'm working with a client now, and it's like we're formulating that to go out and get some money. I said, and I've been on angel groups, and I've sat in those meetings, and it's tough. I said it's going to be a tough crowd, right? You want them to write a check for a few $1 million? They're going to say, what are the use of funds, right? Where's this money going to go? You better have a good answer.
Yeah. One of the things I'm listening to an audiobook about Elon Musk. It was an autobiography written. And one of the things that Elon said was that when he asks for money now, he asks for twice as much. So he's got extra money. He said, I don't have to go back to the shareholders in a year's time and say, look, by the way, this plant we just built, we have to build another one. It's going to cost another $1 billion. He can actually not have to have that conversation. So his idea is ask for much more than you need, so you don't have to go back and disappoint your investors. And if you can raise it, great, you've got cash and you've got a backstop, which is interesting because most people only ask for barely enough to get them over the line.
They ask for too little.
Yeah.
It's like always ask for more because people are going to handle you down.
Yes.
Right. And not only that, but when I was in the leasing business, I used to tell my partner, I said, look, it's the same amount of effort to do a $10,000 lease as it is to do a $10 million lease.
Yes.
Right. Sure. The sales cycle is a little bit longer, but other than that, the paperwork is pretty much exactly the same. So why don't we do more $10 million leases and less $10,000? Why are we wasting our time with this nickel and dimey stuff? Exactly. You want to try to get more money because let's face it, people are out there investing. It's about deal flow. They really don't care about your company. I hate to say it. I hate to burst people's balloon who are out there looking for money and stuff. They're not going to spend a lot of time nurturing your company. They're looking at it. They're looking at the pro forma, and they're saying there's an opportunity for us to get a 5 or a 10x within less than 10 years. If it checks all the boxes, we'll give you a bunch of money. Just don't screw it up. And that's pretty much how it works.
It was interesting.
When you talk about gambling, it is a little bit like gambling. It's it is a lot like gambling.
Well, one of the Silicon Valley investors said on the Clubhouse I was listening to, he said, look, I figure on 50 investments, one will take off and the others will do okay. The rest will fail. So he knows that he's gambling on a big payout on one of those deals.
It's exactly how it works. If you were to do 10 deals, 5 of them are going to crater. 2 are going to make a little bit of money. 2 are going to lose a little bit of money to cancel each other out. So it's that 10th deal. You want that 10th deal to be Facebook or whatever. Right. Or whatever it is. It's almost like, TV shows. I had a friend who was in the TV business, and it's like, why are there so many crummy TV shows? And he said, well, because one Seinfeld pays for 100 crummy TV shows. They're all out there chasing the same thing. They're all looking for the mega hit because the numbers there are so staggering by comparison to everything else. So it is gambling.
I think you swing back to that in terms of basic entrepreneurship, right? I think what entrepreneurs think, and this is one of my sort of pet haves, is they think failure is a problem or, like there's no option to fail. The reality is failure is what you really want to happen. You want to have so many times you test something till something passes and works, but you can't expect to go in there and it works perfect first time. You have to have failures to learn and grow and figure out what you're doing. I think, and there's a danger, and particularly when you come from an employee background, where you can't, in the school system teaches you not to fail. Like if you fail a school system, you fail school, right? And so
you don't get to move up.
Exactly. Whereas and the mentality goes out to the entrepreneurship, and then they turn around and go, oh, if this fails, go, well, yeah, it probably will. You'll probably have to do it 10 times till you get it right. And I think that mentality of going, no, just keep doing it until you work it out. And it takes time to get that tipping point to the point where you actually figure out what really works, and then straight away you've got it. But that can take years to figure out something.
Well, look, Edison said, I found 2,000 ways not to make a light bulb.
Exactly.
Right. Right. But my little homespun philosophy is it's only a failure if you didn't learn something. Right. So if you learn, well, that didn't work. All right. Just don't go back and do that again. pivot around that, find another thing.
Yeah, and sometimes a failure isn't actually a failure. Sometimes it's a learning curve in terms of, like, in my previous business, I learned, not to trust your supplier so much and not to own your own brand, and partnerships are dangerous. So I learned 3 very important lessons.
The partnership's a dangerous part. I learned, I was on a retreat in 2008 in Iceland, and I was talking to my friend Johnny and complaining about how so many people owed me so much money. And he looked at me and he said, "Henry, are you a bank?" And I'm like, "Johnny, I'm not a bank." He said, "Well, why don't you stop acting like one?" It was just that. And so, I went back, looked at the terms I was giving people, looked at all sorts of different stuff. So now I'm a hard case. I don't loan anybody a nickel for anything, right? In my coaching practice, you pay me. I got clients in December. They pay me for the entire year. Never have to chase them for money. Yeah. I give them a 10% discount, pay me for the whole year. If somebody's credit card, falls out, it's like, get me a good credit card number or I'm going to cancel the next session. Yeah. It's just business, right?
You can't be their bank. I think that's
I've had to sue people. And, you're talking about doubling. I had to sue, a guy owed me, 20 grand. Wait, what did he owe me? He owed me 20 grand. And I told my lawyer, I said, I would settle for 10. He said, well, if they owe you 20, let's go ask the court for 40. Right. And then he went to the court and the court said the other party didn't show up. We got a summary judgment. He said, we're going to give you 80. Right. Oh, wow. So I got a judgment. So I got a judgment for $80,000. And then I hired a marshal in New York City. They found a bank account that had $15,000 in it. They seized it. My lawyer took 5. I got the other 10, which is what I would have settled for if they had just answered my phone calls.
Double your price, because people will meet you in the middle. I think that's the other thing. Double your price. So I reckon that people always pay 10% more and wait one more day.
Yeah, I mean, cutting the baby in half is not the worst strategy in the world. There are some people who say, no, you should never do that. But I've had success with that. Sometimes you just, but if you're an entrepreneur, that really is the toughest part. People will talk about it and say, oh no, it's getting sales. It's like getting paid
and keeping
is the toughest part. Getting paid.
Yeah,
right.
Getting paid
You talked about lifestyle, your lifestyle sort of filling itself. You start making thousands of dollars and you start spending thousands of dollars. What's really interesting is that, again, my wife and I have been together for 32 years. We've lived pretty much exactly the same lifestyle for our entire life, whether we've made a lot of money or not made a lot of money. We just kind of live the way that we live.
Yep. And make your money fit around it. And that's good incentive to go out there and make money, right? Because you have to.
I buy a car, we just bought a brand new car because we bought a brand new house, but I buy a car, I buy the best car that I want to buy, and I'll drive it until the fenders fall off. Pretty much what I do, right? I get an extended warranty and I drive it until it just falls apart. And that's fine. I don't need to have one new car every 5 minutes. It doesn't matter. Buy something good.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the thing with focus, right? Because I think what businesses do, they move on too quickly. They don't accept failure. And then they move on to think it's completely failed when it could have just been a tweak to make it work. And then they need to kind of think, oh, well, if I just tweak this and I'll offer this at a different price. And I had this exact conversation with a client yesterday. She said, well, I want to offer this as a standalone program. They just buy and keep it forever. And I said, well, what do you want to charge for? She said, I don't know. I said, well, let's just chuck some prices out and see what happens. Let's see what prices we can get. Not just go in there. So we've got to cover our costs. I said, but then other than that, let's play around with it. Let's go high. Let's go low. Let's try it out. Let's experiment, see what happens. Yeah. Right. It's your product. You make your own decisions. People, I can't do that. Yes, you can. It's your business.
It's your business. You can decide.
Yeah.
Big companies do that all the time. My wife was a clothing designer for many years, and she designed stuff for Victoria's Secret catalog. Not the lingerie stuff, but the actual clothes. Too bad it wasn't the lingerie stuff. But and Victoria's Secret got into a lot of trouble because they were sending catalogs with different pricing for the same item to different zip codes.
Yeah.
And people were starting to compare notes and saying, why is this item $35 here in Beverly Hills and $20 in Milwaukee?
Yeah.
Right?
They do it with food in Australia. Like different suburbs have different food prices.
Yeah.
So,
but the internet is a great equalizer. Right?
Online ordering, right?
Well, there's no catalog. It's like, you know, you can have a custom URL. So where John comes into it, that's John's pricing, right?
Based on your rewards, right? Based on what. So we could go all day, I reckon.
No doubt.
So let's wrap it up on one last thing. What's the best piece of advice you could give someone if they came to you and said, look, my business is not working really well. I need to do something. I think I'll just give up. You know, what do you think their best advice is in this current day? Particularly we got pivoting and all that sort of stuff. What do you think the first thing they should do?
And I've had people come up and do that. And I'll say, okay, give up. Talk to me about what giving up looks like. Describe it to me. Take it through in
the horror
detail.
Story.
We're going to look forward. So I've used my coach's magic wand and decided that you have just given up. Okay. So tomorrow this is over. It's done. Take me through it. What's this next week look like? Right? What are you going to do? If you can map it out in detail and it looks pleasing and it looks like a really good option, then do it. I wouldn't tell you to not do it. Because giving up isn't necessarily the worst solution in the world. It might actually be a really, really good solution. But we have to, dare I say, intellectualize this and look at it over the course of time, as opposed to looking at it as I'm throwing my hands up because I'm so emotionally wrought, right? One of the things that I always caution people, especially as a trader, is that you don't want to make any sort of important decision while you are in an emotionally charged state.
Yes.
So what we have to do is we've got to work to get you out of that emotionally charged state and think a little soberly, a little more clearly, a little more executive function, and a little less amygdala or whatever it might be. And I'm not a neuroscientist, but I know enough to be dangerous. But there's a lot to be said, whether it be good, bad, or indifferent, as to looking forward and saying, okay, how's this going to look? What's the month of February going to look like for you now that you've given up? What are you going to be doing? You're going to be in your jammies all day? Well, we're all in our jammies all day. But are you going to get up at noon, play video games, or are you going to sit down and try to conjure up a new business from whole cloth? What's it going to be?
Good job. JOB, right?
Are you going to go get a JOB? Now, I have a friend who coined this term. My friend Keith coined this term, unemployable.
Yes.
Right? Once an entrepreneur, always an entrepreneur. Now, it's not completely true. I have a friend of mine, a very good friend, who sold his business about 5-6 years ago and, made some bank on that, made, multiple 7 figures. Now he works for Amazon. And he's worked for Amazon for the last probably 5 years. And he's always cooking up different entrepreneurial side hustles and things like that. But he's perfectly happy running a team at Amazon, and he's fine. I think he'll start an entrepreneurial business some point in the future, taking all of his Amazon stock options and using that as seed capital. So it can happen, but that's more the exception that proves the rule. For the most part, once you're an entrepreneur working on your own accord, I don't say having control, because I have, control is like a non-coachy word. We don't really control anything, but we have influence on things, so we can influence. It's a little bit of a pattern language thing. But yeah, we have a much greater influence on the outcome for our personal journey when we're entrepreneurs than we have when we're beholden to someone else for our paycheck. It's just as simple as that.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And I think the risk level or risk factor kicks in there, I think, in a given up stage where you're looking at what's my risk. If you hit the level where you cannot handle the risk anymore, you're waking up. I heard a great saying, if you wake up 3 times in a row thinking about anyone else but your wife, you're thinking about that problem all every day, then at the end of the day, you're in trouble, because that thing is starting to get bad. And I think that's the real level, right? Very, very, very astute. I tell people the body keeps the score. So listen to your body, right? If you're getting aches and pains and lethargic and stomach pain and this and whatever the case may be,
your body is telling your brain that something is wrong. And the brain is magnificent in its ability to compartmentalize and forget things. Yes. But the body never forgets anything.
He's always kickback.
And it's going to shout at you and tell you that, dude, what you're doing ain't working.
Yeah. So, Henry, we're going to stop. So really,
all right.
It's really fun talking to you. And I think, as I said,
it was great. We're going to have some editing to do. We went over.
We did, but that's all good. I think it's fine. Like, I think we talked about so many different things, and I think I really value you coming on and talking about it. And I think it was a really great time. So really, thank you for that.
Glad to be here.
So, bit of shameless promotion. Your website is DAAS Knowledge, DAAS knowledge.com.
Correct.
And I think it's a great website. I think people should go there anyway, just to have a look and see what what a website really should be done from a coaching perspective, particularly. I think it's very well done. Yeah. And so really appreciate
It's always good to put one or two profane. There's actually a study was done about this, that one or two, quote, 4-letter words in anything are it's very effective. Not to overuse it. You can't overuse it where like every other word is the F word. That becomes noise.
Well, there's a great documentary on Netflix about the F word and actually other swear words as well. The F word is very entertaining. Yeah. It's actually, when they look at it and go, what the background of that one is quite interesting. So, I think you're right there. I think I was in, and I think the media, the TV industry only lets you have like one for PG, and it's like it's limited.
There used to be George Carlin used to do a thing about the 7, forbidden words.
Yeah.
But it keeps it real. I can't stand when I go to a website and it's just all this corporate speak and blather. Talk to me like a person. I showed my website. I had it redone a couple of years ago, and I worked with a designer, a woman named Mel out of Vancouver. And it's, my wife looked at it and it's like, it's kind of in your face. I said, good. That's kind of what I was going for.
Well,
she said, she said, this might alienate some people. I said, well, that's good, because I don't want them as my clients.
No, they can't handle you at the front end. They're not certainly going to need the back end, are they?
No.
So thanks so much, Henry. And I'll put up the links and everything that you can get access to.
Sure. Thank you, John. My pleasure.
Appreciate your time.